Welcome to the IVF Abroad podcast for people who are struggling with infertility and trying to conceive and who are facing more obstacles than options when it comes to having fertility testing or treatment in their home countries. Alongside other experts, I will share, educate and empower you on your journey and help you to learn more about going abroad for advanced fertility testing and treatments like IVF and egg donation. I'm Emma Haslam, your host, now mum of one, and the go-to expert in fertility treatment abroad. Since the birth of our son in 2018, I have made it my mission to make fertility treatment more informed, transparent, accessible, supported and affordable for more people. And I help people just like you to become unstuck, to find a best fit clinic that truly meets their needs and to have fertility treatment on their terms and timescales so they can achieve their dreams of growing their families. And I'm here now to help you too. Be sure to check out the free resources in the show notes for more help after listening to today's episode. Hello, welcome back. Now, before we get started on today's episode of the podcast, I want to quickly let you know about something that I am doing on Wednesday. So tomorrow, if you're listening to this in real time, something that I rarely offer live. So at 7:00 British summertime until 8:30 p.m, tomorrow night, Wednesday the 29th of April, I'm going to be hosting a free live masterclass training and Q&A. It's going to be all about the secrets of going abroad for fertility treatment that most people don't know about. This is for you if you're feeling stuck with options in your home country. Maybe you're curious about whether going abroad could be right for you. Perhaps you've decided you want to explore treatment abroad, but feeling a bit overwhelmed, maybe not knowing where to start, getting a bit stuck in research, options, etc., not feeling clear on your next steps. By the end of the session, you will leave with a much better understanding of whether treatment abroad could be right for you if you're undecided. You'll understand the opportunities that perhaps you don't realise are available, plus the highlights and also the watch outs to be aware of as well. You'll also find out what actually matters when it comes to planning your next steps, and you'll leave feeling much more confident about how to move forward. And it's completely free. And as I said, I'll be doing a live Q&A at the end so I can take some of your questions. Now, to join, there is a link in the show notes, but I just want to say to you that you can join however you like. Cameras on, cameras off. I'll mute the microphones anyway. And we can use the chat if you want to ask a question. So you can be in your pajamas, you can be on camera in your pajamas. I literally don't care. Eating your dinner, I genuinely don't mind. It's just about carving out that time for yourself, whether you are undecided on going abroad or whether you've decided that it is for you, but you're in those early stages of planning, thinking about it, or you're stuck, overwhelmed, over-researching, etc. Let's get you sorted. It's completely free. To sign up, just use a link in the show notes. It will be held on Zoom, and I hope to see some of you there tomorrow. Okay, now on to today's episode. I mean, there are so many things that people don't tell you when it comes to planning fertility treatment abroad. And I think when most people consider it, they usually assume one of two things. So firstly, that it is going to be too complicated, or it certainly feels complicated when it's something that you haven't done before, which is quite normal to feel when it's something big and new. It's the way our brains keep us safe and we have all of these unanswered questions, don't we? Or that it must be risky. And while absolutely both of those things can be true, if it's approached properly, then it does not have to be like that. And there is so much that people don't realise as well. So let's dig into some of that. So the first thing that I want to talk about is nobody tells you that actually going abroad can be a fantastic option. It doesn't have to be a second-class decision. You know, you don't have to put anything at risk. It can be a really premium first-class experience. And I think sometimes people assume that because you can save money, and things like that, that people presume that maybe because you're going to a different country as well, that somehow it's substandard, cheap, and nobody wants cheap IVF or fertility treatment. I mean, we want to save money, right? But we want to do things safely, properly. Yes, stretch our budgets further. But, if you go to the right country and the right clinic, it absolutely can be a much better option than perhaps ones that you might be considering in your home country. And I think that's not talked about enough. And, almost not as many people now, but like when I first started Your IVF Abroad in 2019, a lot of the reasons that clients were coming to me was because they wanted to save money. And that was their kind of primary reason for going abroad. And while people, of course, want to stretch their budgets further and save money, what I am noticing is that over the last few years, people's reasons for going abroad have really expanded. And I guess that's probably because people are talking more about some of the other benefits of going abroad. And people come to me and actually it's not about cost. They know that they can stretch their budget further by going abroad, but that's not the primary driver. It's one of the reasons of many. They realise that at the right clinic in the right country, they have more option perhaps to treatments and testing they don't have in their home country. Speed is a big one for people. And also customer service, because a lot of people are dissatisfied with the service that they've had in their home countries, be that on the NHS, for example, here in the UK, but even privately as well. And then things like options around donation, if that's something that people are considering. And actually, in mainland Europe, they are, I say they, the royal they, there are some international clinics that are servicing lots of international patients from all over the world, and they're coming for a reason, and they're doing far more cycles of fertility treatment like IVF in a year than, for example, clinics here in the UK. So they are light years ahead at certain clinics. And so while you absolutely cannot say that going abroad has higher success rates, and I've talked about that in previous episodes, what I do see is people who have had, very challenging journeys and no success in, for example, here in the UK or America, go abroad to the right clinic for their needs, able to stretch their budgets further, and they're able to get to the bottom of things and have then gone on to have families. So I do think there's a lot to be said for being able to stretch your budget further to give you more in the kitty to either have more attempts or to get more detailed investigations and testing done. But also if you're going to a clinic that's right for your needs and that's, doing a lot more practice, if you like, practice on real people, but, have done a lot more of this, have got the much more experience, then it stands to reason that if you can stretch your budget further and you're at the right clinic for your needs and they've got lots of experience in the thing that you need, then you've got more chance of success. And I think people are recognizing this, and people are sick of receiving substandard, average at best service and paying a lot of money for things when it doesn't need to be that way. And also for lots of people, being away from home can be really nice, being in a different environment where the sun perhaps is shining, that can be really nice for people too. So it's interesting how things have changed, and it's not just about money now. And I think people are realizing that this isn't, it's not a cheaper option all round. Yes, it provides better value for money depending on where you go, but actually there are lots of benefits to going abroad as well. This one is a little bit less obvious, I think. So you may never have considered this, but it might feel complicated to you thinking about going abroad for fertility treatment because you've not done it before, right? And that is normal. Think about when you start a new job. Oh my goodness, it's like everything's in another language. Your brain hurts, doesn't it? Because it's just new and you think, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be able to do this. And then one day it just clicks. And I think the challenge is with fertility treatment is that it's going to be hard. Wherever you have it, it's going to be a hard thing to go through. And it can just feel like, oh God, it's another thing to think about. But then what can happen, and I've talked about this in last week's episode, is we get stuck in perhaps over researching, stuck in indecision, stuck trying to decide, do we go home or abroad? And if we've decided to stay at home, well, which clinic? And if we've decided to go abroad, well, which country, which clinic? And that can keep us stuck. And actually, being stuck is one of the hardest things. Again, I talked about this in last week's episode about being stuck in limbo. That can be harder than having fertility treatment itself. Different, obviously. And sometimes, staying where we are feels like a simple, safe option. And what then can then happen is time runs away with us and we just feel completely stuck. But, staying where we are and thinking, okay, we'll make a decision, and then you literally decide to stay where you are in your home country, can mean long waiting lists, no treatment access, repeated dead ends, false promises. I see this a lot with people exploring the NHS pathways in particular, expecting they'll wait for ages for referral, expecting that from that referral they'll then be starting IVF, to then be told that that's just a first appointment, and they're either told that they're eligible there or they're not eligible, told if they are eligible about the true waiting list sometimes and not others, and then things get pushed back, and people are having their time wasted under, these illusions that things are going to happen quicker, or that they're going to qualify for things, and they're just not. And then people going privately, even, it's not always as quick as you think it's going to be, particularly in certain countries like the UK. There's the expense of treatment. It can be very hard when you're looking and comparing costs between clinics in the UK and abroad, for example, or even America and abroad, because the way that they lay things out on their websites and things can be very misleading. And so people can end up getting stuck in a private system, having huge bills that they're just not budgeted for. And they've thought, well, it doesn't look that different. I've got to pay for flights and accommodation, but actually what's included is very different, or what's not included is often very, very different. And, lack of answers. So many people come to me that are struggling with things like unexplained infertility. And this is not just on the NHS, this is privately too. And limited options. I've talked about this a few times on the podcast. This is a big one. If you are here in the UK, or even if you're in America, America's massive, but you're unlikely to travel outside of your state to go for treatment. I mean, you might do, but there can be a real lack of options, particularly when you start to get smart and think about exactly what you need in a fertility clinic. And here in the UK, if you're outside of London, we have hardly any fertility clinics. And what people do is they look, understandably, which clinic's sort of closest to where we live. And then there's usually one or two, unless you're in a really rural area, and then you might need to travel anyway. But we really do lack options here. And if you're looking for donation, you may want choice around anonymity. If you're a person of colour, you might struggle to get an egg donor in certain countries. And that can be the same abroad. It's got to be the right country, and you've got to know where you're going and what you're doing to make sure things are safe and ethical. But sometimes staying either stuck or thinking that private treatment in your home country is going to be the answer isn't always the answer. And that can leave you feeling even more stuck. So none of that is simple. So it might feel simple when you're making your mind up about where to have your treatment. But if it's not the right place, if it's going to cost you too much money, that you can't afford the treatment, testing, things that you might need, if you're waiting longer than you need to, if they can't provide what you need, but it takes a while to get to that point, then that is not easy. And going abroad, let me tell you, even with the logistics, will be much easier than that. Exploring another route can actually create momentum and get you out of staying stuck or becoming stuck. nobody tells you that going abroad is not one thing. So people often talk about fertility treatment abroad like it's one simple category, and it just isn't, because of course different countries have different laws, different ethics, different regulations, rules around donor conception and also availability, costs for treatment, costs for living while you are there, waiting times, level of English spoken and written, approaches, testing options, travel ease, specialisms, like the list goes on. But this is why choosing a country first is super important before we start Googling clinics, because not every country is right for every person. And, it also helps to dictate how much money you can potentially save as well, depending on where you are looking at going. Because not every country is right for every person, as I just said, just like not every clinic is right for every person. So it gets put into this umbrella, but actually it's more nuanced than it sounds. I don't think people talk enough either about, when you are researching clinics, how that creates overwhelm and often more questions than answers. And we all do this. I did this. So, you're just doing what we would all do. People start Googling clinics and then suddenly they've got 14 tabs open, 6 spreadsheets, mixed opinions, and no clarity. And they just feel more confused than when they started. But that's primarily because that shouldn't be the starting point. A strategy and a plan should be the starting point. And consideration of which country first, and considering things like what treatment you need, what matters most to you, your budget, your timeline. Are you going down the donor conception route? What are your needs? What are your travel realities? Because then it becomes much easier to narrow clinics down. Also, nobody tells you that spending money on support can actually save you money in the long run. Now, I know it can be really hard to justify spending money on support and guidance when you are spending a ton of money on having fertility treatment, even if you're going abroad and like saving money. But you've got to think about the bigger cost, because the likelihood is you are going to save money, particularly if you use somebody to help you with this. You're going to save money on your fertility testing and treatment. And you've got to think about the bigger costs of not getting guidance and support. So making the wrong choices around countries and clinics, wasting months, years, repeated cycles in the wrong clinics and not getting a different result, unnecessary travel, stress, spending money that, isn't being spent in the right places, anxiety, decisions made in panic mode. And all of that can have an impact on you financially too, but also can have a massive impact on the way that you feel going through that. And I don't think that that is worth your peace of mind. When things are done properly, it saves often more money than it actually costs to get support or guidance. And it can be hard to justify it to ourselves, I know, but it's kind of like in this sort of process, you don't know what you don't know until you need to know it. And you're already going through something really quite stressful. So it's just something to bear in mind. Doing things properly, planned, and with guidance from the beginning can actually end up saving you more than what it costs financially, but absolutely saving you from additional stress and anxiety. And, this is going to be a difficult time for you. So why not try and make things easier where you can? And also, I think when it comes to having fertility treatment abroad, there's a big part of you don't know what you don't know, and until you need to know it. And you don't want any last minute panics in the middle of what you're doing. And you do need help with finding the right clinic and working out the right country for your needs. That is so, so, so important. And if you come along to the training on tomorrow, on Wednesday night, then that's going to help you to move forwards as well. And finally, nobody tells you that it doesn't have to take over your life. And I say this in terms of the going abroad bit. I think when we have fertility treatment, it does take over our lives, doesn't it? Because I'm not sure how people don't let it take over their lives. I mean, if you can do that, you're amazing. But I think perhaps it's unrealistic for lots of people for it not to, because it's just such a big thing. But the going abroad bit, when it's well planned and you are organised and you know what to do, when, and in the right order, honestly, it can feel far more manageable than you expect. And there's still admin to do if you have fertility treatment in your home country. You know, tests can be organised strategically. Travel time can often be reduced, manipulated, depending on how it needs to look for you in your circumstances. The process can be broken down into manageable steps. And instead of chaos, it can feel structured. It really can. Okay, I think that's it. I mean, there's loads I could say on this, but if you're coming along to the masterclass tomorrow night, then I'm going to be talking in much more detail about going abroad to help you. So if you've either been thinking about going abroad, but you're unsure, or you are decided, but in the early stages of like researching, or you've decided ages ago, but you're stuck in researching, then that all makes complete sense. Let me show you how to approach this properly. You are not behind. You are not failing. This is not your fault. It's all good. You just might need a clearer roadmap to help you to make decisions and to work out what your next step is, which is exactly why I'm running this masterclass free tomorrow night, Wednesday, the 29th of April, 7 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. with a Q&A where I'll take some of your questions as well. And remember, the link will be emailed to you once you sign up through the link in the show notes. If you don't receive it within 5 minutes of signing up, then please check your junk and spam and put it in your diary so you don't forget to carve out this time for someone, because sometimes what you need is just not more random information, but the right information in the right order from somebody who has been there, but has also been there now with over 200 people around the world that I've supported to do this over the past 7 years. So there's a lot of information that I'm going to share with you, which will really help you to get clear on your next steps. So come and join me. The link is in the show notes. And I hope this episode has been helpful, by the way, to see things a little bit differently. And I want to remind you that for most people, there are many more options available than you realise. Until next week, bye. If you are facing more obstacles than options and want to learn more about how to overcome your fertility testing and treatment challenges in your home country so that you too can fast track to growing your family and on your terms, then check out my free training at yourivfabroad.co.uk/free masterclass. Don't forget to rate and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and so that I can reach and help more people. Thanks for listening.